Ahoy! Welcome to the Sea Captain Leadership Podcast with Phil Bender, where we help listeners navigate the uncharted waters of personal and professional growth. The Sea Captain Leadership Podcast is about sharing energizing stories of leadership development and the culture surrounding top-performing individuals and their businesses. We want to help you to take risks and build your vision by showing you how to break free of the boundaries that are holding you back. So today on the Sea Captain Way Leadership Podcast, we welcome Elyse Stoner and Angela York from Event Advisors. Event Advisors transforms routine financial services events into tailored and powerful relationship building experiences. So if you're in this podcast for a client experience, you're in for a treat. Event Advisors helps create and host these client events that are not only lavish, that's intriguing, but meaningful. Their philosophy centers around achieving high event ROM, return on the moment, by focusing on what truly matters, your clients. They specialize in ideal client-focused goal setting, intricate planning, and thorough follow-up, ensuring every event moment resonates with your attendees and fosters genuine relationships even after the event ends. This pair believes that successful events are an opportunity for financial advisors to genuinely connect with clients and strengthen relationships. That is a mouthful, and this is going to be an exciting event. Welcome, Angela and Elyse. Good to have you.
Thanks for having us. We're excited for the conversation.
Thanks for having us, Phil.
So we're coastal today. Elyse hails from Philadelphia, and Angela hails from LA or Southern California, I guess, better way to put it. And so we get a unique perspective on a national scale. And so let's get started. So tell us a little bit, Elyse, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about how you got here. How do you get to this place where you're doing all this cool stuff?
It's been a long, windy road. It's not where I ever really envisioned myself being. I started in the sports, entertainment, and higher education marketing world. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I started my own business in 2016 in this event marketing strategy space, because what I was seeing is so many organizations were putting on events and kind of shrugging their shoulders afterwards. If you said, well, was it a success? Did it meet your goals? And they'd be like, it was good. It was fine. It was really expensive. I don't know. Which is when I coined this whole ROM, return on the moment, versus trying to measure events strictly on an ROI basis. So I did that for several years. Angela and I met during the pandemic, and with her background in financial services events and my mindset of like, well, why are we doing these things? How are we measuring success? We came together and we created Event Advisors to be able to help folks in the financial services industry be able to measure event success. Like, we're dealing with numbers people, right? Like you need to know how to measure success. So that's how I got here and where we are today.
I love it. I love it. And Angela, what add some to that? Add some additional stuff. COVID match. What were you doing before?
Well, we say it's the silver lining of the pandemic. Maybe one or two of them. But yes, that was definitely a turning point in my career. And I am grateful for that. Meeting Elyse changed everything really in my career, as well as we're trying one client at a time to change the outlook and the perception and the execution of financial services events. So my background prior to us meeting was a little over 2 decades of advisor marketing implementation and event planning implementation. For half of that, I worked in-house in an advisory firm here in Southern California. And then in 2008, I started consulting and working with wholesalers and advisory firms here in my local area, doing just that: marketing plan implementation and event planning execution. And it was exactly what Elyse said she saw other firms were doing. We literally rinsed and repeated the events. Some worked, some didn't. We were taking events that were suggested by coaching plans, coaches, broker-dealers, FOMO from seeing another advisor do a Galentine's or a shred day. And while those are great events, they may not be the best suited event for some advisors and maybe great events for other advisors. So that was my role and how I grew up, implementing all the logistics for all those events. And when we met at the beginning of the pandemic, from a mutual colleague and friend, just really on the premise of you're both in events, think you guys should talk. So we did, and I was exactly what she had said. She was talking about strategic event planning, which there's a big difference between just event planning and strategic event planning. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, my head would be like, we didn't do that. Or I would tilt my head and go, no, we didn't do that. Should I have done that? And so it was really marrying the two school of thoughts, the advisor event logistics implementation, because there are some nuances when planning an advisory event versus any other event. You've got compliance, you have wholesalers, you have a few of those nuances, which, again, I grew up with and I know very well, with the strategic event planning. And when we combined the two and we brought ROM, return on the moment, into our methodology and our planning, and Event Advisors was born, it really took the guesswork out of the events, wondering, is this going to be successful or not? The events are designed to be successful. And we can talk about our model in a little bit, but really it's a game changer, because that you are very intentionally creating events for specific clients in your book of business to deepen those relationships. And there are many, many benefits in doing that and making those successful.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to unpack this a little further, because, with Sea Captain Coaching, it's all things performance. Okay, so we do work in the financial services sector, but I think anybody listening in today, whether they're in that space or just any performance-driven career or company, they would want to pay attention to some of this. It's interesting, as I go back, I'm reflecting on a conversation I had with a writer way back in the day. This had to be 25 years ago. And there were these commercials, and they were doing them on bank accounts, and they wanted people to set up bank accounts. And the commercials were so creative. They won awards. They were amazing. And I just complimented the writer, who was a client of mine. I said, boy, this is great. How did you do this? And he went through it. And then he says to me, did you open an account? And I went, no. And he says, well, then does it really matter? And so what I'm hearing you guys talk about in Return of the Moment is that, hey, there's got to be an account open here, okay? There's got to be something that comes of this that you can measure as a metric as to what does that moment, how do you monetize that moment? So I just wanted to share that with you, because, and to give our client base, our listener base, some perspective that these things are not just done just for fun. They are done strategically, and so I love it. Let's dive in a little bit further. So let's talk about this return on the moment mindset. Okay, how do you quantify this thing? What is an ROM mindset? Maybe speak to that.
Okay. So I love the story about the bank account, and we can even use that advertisement within this ROM, return on the moment mindset. When someone's running an ad on the radio, for example, yes, there is this moment of, I have spent X on my ad buy, and I hope and plan to make Y on that. And that's ROI, right? And no matter what industry we're in, there is that moment. What we talk about is there's a return on that moment. So again, in the advertising space, right, you're going to still have to spend X to get those ads on the radio. But instead of saying my success is won or loss, again, remember, it's all about keeping score in sports. It's about where does that move your ideal client in their journey and in their relationship with you. That's what the ROM is for us. So talking about client events, and we are very specific in what we do because it's about client events. This is not prospecting events. These are your people, and how do you get them to talk about you in a positive way outside of the room? So we say it's an event moment, and you're measuring return on that moment. And that is, are they talking about you? Are they putting social media posts? If your business goal is to create other partnerships, are you setting goals for that event moment that are going to drive that goal of partnership? It's not simply, I held a seminar and 8 people backed up Brinks trucks that afternoon. So that's what we mean when it's
Right.
sort of a mindset shift, that moments are those rocks in your client journey stream, and they all have their own value, but the value isn't necessarily I made money, I didn't make money off of this event, end of story. Because the reality is with events, you're going to have a bad ROI. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on that, because what you are focused on is the feeling. Mm-hmm. You are focused on the raving fan, telling the story. Okay, and I use an example of a talk I gave in Tampa, and I was done, and a gift came to me after, about 2 weeks later, and it was a gift that had. Inside of it was everything that I'm passionate about. I was shocked. It was the coolest thing ever. It had barbecue tools. It had a 6-pack of Narragansett beer, which is the Bud Light of Rhode Island. And it had all these spices and all this stuff. And I was just so overwhelmed by it. I called the manager and I said, how'd you pick this up? He said, well, my executive assistant just stalked you on Facebook and Instagram. Right? And I'm like, well, I've told that story 50 times. Right. And I think that's really what you're getting at here, Elyse, is this piece about how often does that feeling come back? That's a return of the moment, in my interpretation.
Yeah. While we don't promote stalking, I do believe
Sure,
that's very clever. And instead of having to stalk, you are creating this event moment where you're actually gathering some of this information. We talk a lot about follow-up in the whole ROM, return on the moment, and strategic event, because you've got this moment, this opportunity to learn more about your client. And how do you file that away, and how do you use that? And Angela's got some really great examples of ways that we've worked with clients to do that. And it's not really stalking.
Well, take the stalking part out of it.
Listening.
That was just
we call it listening.
That was a metaphor. They were paying attention to what I was
call
doing.
It what you will. It's fine.
Well, the listeners are going to remember this piece because of that. So, and again, this is a moment as well. And that's a piece in it that they'll remember as our jokingly conversation.
Good point.
Jokingly, is that a word? Conversation about.
Well, I think we should make the title. I think we should make the title of this podcast
Don't Stalk.
Stalking with Event
Purpose.
I'm sorry. I started laughing.
With event advisors.
I broke character. Stalking with event advisors. No, that's not the title. That was the very awkward contribution from the host. Angela, what would you add to all this?
That's a tough act to follow.
You were going to make a point. I know. It's so bad.
I'd actually like to dig in a little bit more to that, because if people are scratching their heads, okay, if I have a moment and I do something memorable, how does that actually move the needle in my business, whether it's an advisory firm or any other business? And I'd like to go back to what you said at the very beginning. Our methodology for strategic events can be transferred to any industry. We've just hung our hats in the advisory space because that's where I've grown up. And again, we can work across all disciplines, but that's really where we speak to, is in the advisor services space. But if you're not there, all of this can be translated. So I wanted to just put a pin in that comment there. So how does this move the needle in my business? Well, when you have a moment, and again, at the beginning, you had said lavish. And yes, a moment, an event can be lavish, but it doesn't have to be. This is a moment. A small dinner is a moment. A gift is a moment. An educational event is a moment. So whatever that moment might be, we always like to coach our clients to put your attendee hat on. And to talk about a strategic event is really to identify your business goals. What are your business goals? Is it to develop relationships with a certain sector of your client base, females, adult children, whatever it might be? Then gear that event around those goals. You can have multiple business goals. And then the event logistics are tied to that demographic with the psychographics. So, if you have a working middle-aged clientele, you likely are going to need to hold an event close to freeways, after work. You also want to gauge their interests, and you do that by asking your top clients. We're looking to host a series of events this year, and give them ideas. Don't just ask an open-ended question saying we're looking at doing Finance 101 or gardening or a trip to the theater. Would you like to come to any of these? Do any of these interest you? And then they can share other interests and gear your events around those topics. Because as an attendee, if you're invited to something that isn't of interest to you, you're not going to go. If you're middle-aged and you're invited to a Social Security seminar, likely is you won't attend. But if you're invited to a seminar on college planning or paying off college debt or buying a first home, something along those lines, it resonates and you'll take the time to go. So that's the first piece I wanted to unpack. And then how does this move my business? Well, as an attendee, when you're invited to an event and it resonates with you and you get to talk to other people that are like-minded in a quote unquote community, talk to the advisor or host and get to know them, you leave with what we call positive emotional memory. So as you start to collect the positive emotional memories from this relationship with the advisor or the host, and again, I'm trying to span both, all disciplines, then when you're doing business with the advisor, you're comfortable, you have started to know them, like them, and trust you. And that opens up the door to bringing multiple accounts. You all know most people have their accounts, across different companies, bringing in more assets because you trust that advisor, feeling comfortable to introduce them to friends and family. So at the holiday dinner table, at the summer picnic, when your neighbor or your friend discloses that their daughter is, going to be going through a divorce, or there was a death in the family, or an inheritance, and they just don't know what to do in that life moment, it's human nature to want to help and say, you should talk to Phil. He's an amazing advisor. He's helped us through some difficult times, and he'd be happy to be a sounding board. I know he would. And it's just a natural referring moment. And then in the financial services sector, as a parent, you would feel, once you've built that know, like, trust with your advisor, you feel comfortable introducing them to your adult children. And that that works towards retaining the account after your passing. So it's this, again, for those listening, it's I talk with my hands, but it's this wheel that really helps build the business, and it boils down to developing those relationships through event moments.
Yeah, I love it. And anything, Elyse, you'd like to add to that? What a wonderful description. It brings up a lot for me.
The one thing I would bring up, and I touched on this earlier, but it really ties in here as well. We see so many professionals who are so outwardly focused. And what I mean by that is, I'm doing an event because I want to put new people in my funnel. I want to gain new accounts. And my rationale with that is, like I said, I come from the sports and entertainment world. So I give the analogy that the goal is to take your single game ticket purchaser and turn them into a season ticket holder.
Love it.
Versus always just trying to get single game ticket purchasers. It's that same thing. Like, yes, you probably need to do some business development to get people to buy that single ticket. But most of your marketing and relationship building and things of that nature should be happening to take that single game ticket purchaser or your current client, deepening that relationship so they become the season ticket holder, the big donor. They love you, they trust you, they know you, all the things that Angela was talking about. And that is a way to grow and maintain your business.
Okay, so I'm a financial advisor, which was my background. So this, I can play to this. In fact, I managed 125 advisors at one time. And so knowing the mindset of that small business owner, financial advisor, okay, they're not necessarily attuned to some of these, what I would call the long game with a client. Okay, they're also looking at their budget. They're trying to build their infrastructure, so on and so forth. What percentage of a budget should an advisory firm look at here?
That's a tricky one, and it does really have to ebb and flow per advisory firm, because every advisory firm is different. But a standard rule of thumb is 10% of your revenue for marketing and about 50% of that for events. Again, it can shift. If you're not doing any other marketing and you want to put it all in events, great. We're all for that.
We love that.
But
of course you do.
There are other disciplines. There's digital marketing with social media. There's philanthropic endeavors. There's sponsorships. But we actually like to funnel all of that into events. Again, we're biased. So again, super, general rule of thumb, 10% of your revenue, 50% of that for events, at least.
But
yeah. So
if I may.
Yes. No, please.
So as much as we would love for you to funnel all of that into events, again, keep in mind the return on the moment. So if you're going to say, I'm all in on events, you still need to have some sort of communication tool to keep that river flowing once you've passed that particular rock in your stream. So we joke and say, spend it all on events, but really it's not a wise, and honestly, we would not recommend that to a client because you need to have, whether it's email or whatever, that post-event kind of conversation, and keeping people in touch, because like we said, it's usually life events that motivate people to actually move. So the idea is you want to keep that stream flowing. You want to stay in front of them. And then when that life event thing happens, you're the one that they're going to come see.
Yeah, when the event occurs, the story comes back.
Yep.
And it's like a trigger. And so, my guess is if I were to hire you to come in and look at our overall program planning, you would start to take a look at the goals of the firm. You would take a look at where their passions lie. I think is probably a big opportunity. Geography could be, or are you in a major city? Are you in a rural community? I think all those things would apply. So if you were to be hired by somebody or brought in, where do you start? Where do you start with these folks? Elyse, where do you sit down and say, let's figure out what this means to you?
We will sit down and it's almost like the doctor is in. We do like a diagnosis, really. Have you been doing events? What type of events have you been doing? How have you been defining success? And that's sort of one story. Then it's, what are your business goals? Like, what are you trying to accomplish and really help people dig into other than the general, right? We all fall into that. I want to grow my business. Well, what does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And then we talk a lot about who your top clients are. We work with our advisors to, like Angela said, to ask those questions, to garner some more information about them, their interests in events. And then we kind of build that all together and come up with like a roadmap really for what the event strategy should look like. And then depending on what our relationship is, because we do have a couple different ways that we can work with folks, we can help sort of ideate what those events are going to look like. We could support a team as far as saying, okay, we're not in Rhode Island, but if you can send your administrative person, because we're looking for a venue this time of day that does this sort of thing, that's near a highway. And then we kind of coach in how do we make this a strategic opportunity, a strategic moment. And in very limited number of cases, we do the whole thing for you. But we still start with who are you? Who are your people? What resonates with them? And then build the events.
Would you be going out? Maybe Angela, you can add to this. Would you be going out 2-3 years? Would you just be focusing on the year? Does it tie into the vision of the firm? I mean, how long might you make a plan?
Yes, and yes. It really does depend on the advisory firm, much like what we say to get a feel for your ideal clients and what their makeup is and what their interests are. We do the same with ours. So what is the makeup with the firm? Are you planning out 3 to 5 years? And while we can plan the events out that far, you always have to analyze and adjust event to event, and things may shift. Ideally, we like to plan a calendar's year. So right now we're working on our clients' 2026 event calendars. However, there are clients, and it's a lot of them, where we work a quarter or two at a time, because to plan an event, we need at least 8 weeks. Everybody should be planning their events 8 weeks, starting at 8 weeks, unless it's a virtual event, which we say maybe 3 to 4 weeks. That's best practice. So when our clients come to us, we want to make sure we have a few weeks ahead of time to be able to ideate and figure out how the business goals and how we're going to translate that into the event goals. Then we start helping them plan at 8 weeks. So when we work with our clients, it's typically 6 months to a year. We'd love a year, we'd love more, but not many firms can think past a year unless they really have their events dialed in already, in which case then we help them dial them in more.
Yeah. or they have a key person maybe that really is strong in this area,
Right.
that has that type of background. So, as we wrap on this thing, take me, great podcast. I think you guys, it's very exciting what you built. It's very exciting how you approach things. Take me out a few years for event advisors. Tell me what is on the horizon, to use a sea captain term. Elyse, we'll start with you. What's on the horizon for you guys?
I think there's a couple different pockets that are on the horizon. We believe that this ROM, return on the moment mindset, is a big shift. So speaking to organizations, speaking at conferences, sharing the gospel, if you will, of the return on the moment, that's sort of a short-term horizon, but definitely a horizon piece. Another piece that's on there is, we know it's two of us right now, and we want to be able to help as many people as we can, both in the financial services space, but even outside of that. And we always say that we're sort of at the intersection of event and marketing. So if you're thinking of a Venn diagram, we kind of fall into that middle space. Creating a certification for event planners who want to be more in a strategic space, so that they would be a certified event advisor. And if somebody's in Des Moines and they want to work with us, that there is a certified event advisor who can help run their event, help plan their event. They've been trained in the methodology of the event advisors and return on the moment. So that's probably a little bit further out on the horizon, but you have to say it out loud for it to happen.
That's right. It can't be real if you don't state it. And I think as so many advisory firms are now going national, and they have locations in multiple cities, that having a resource like you both would be very helpful, because I hear it quite often from my clients. We do great stuff in our community, but our advisors in other cities aren't getting what they need. The clients in other cities aren't getting what they need. So I can see where you guys would be very valuable there. Angela, what about you? What's your take?
Those are all future horizon goals for us, and to really give those sales wind, if we're talking about that analogy. It's those pieces and the services that help promote those long-term goals. So we have a course that's going to be launched on strategic planning that people could take. Maybe one day we'll write a book or a workbook. And it's really short-term, working with as many advisory firms that work with advisors, wholesalers, to really spread that gospel and letting them know. We often hear, I did events and they don't work. Just changing that perception and that fear. Yeah. And people go, well, how many do I need to do? Just let's start with one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be big and expensive. Start with one that can be meaningful. So.
Yes. So how does a customer, potential client, get a hold of you? How do they touch base with you?
So our website, which is event-advisors with an S, because there's two of us, .net. Right. .net has our contact there, and there's also our services page. And we have sort of three categories. We have a DIY, which is our signature event system, which has taken all of our event experience and put it into a web-based Trello board that someone can purchase so that they can plan their events with all of these strategic thoughts in them, literally in the palm of their hand. And then we have a do it with you, where we have a couple different ways where we consult with advisors and their teams and wholesalers And then we also have a do it for you, which is an unlimited availability where we come in and do again, we learn about it and then we come in and deal with all the moving pieces.
Well,
so
this has been great.
event-advisors.net.
Terrific. Elyse Stoner, Angela York, the East Coast and the West Coast coming together with Event Advisors. Thank you so much for today. And I look very forward to seeing your progress as an organization and a group. Thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Sea Captain Leadership Podcast. If you found the conversation valuable, please like, share, and post a review on your favorite podcast app. To learn more about Sea Captain and its high-performance coaching programs, visit us at seacaptaincoaching.com. The link is in the show notes. You can also follow us at Sea Captain Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening. Wishing you fair winds and a following sea on your journey.